Well, if we haven't met you before, welcome. This is Duane and Rick. You've got the B team on today, I'd say. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm not saying a word.
Okay. we are happy to have you here, and we are in a study called Conventional Wisdom, and we are looking at things that everybody in our culture may agree, yeah, that makes sense, that's right, that's what we believe, but stuff that's even 10 degrees off of truth can be very dangerous. Most of us can identify things that are like, that's just not real, that's just not good. Most of us can identify that. But the stuff that's just 10 degrees off can actually cause us a lot of trouble. Like, if you have a windshield and you have a crack in your windshield, how many of you drove with a crack in your windshield to church today? Just be honest. Yeah. Rebecca's like, no, I don't want to put my hand up and be identified with that group of people. Like, for 90% of the time, that's going to be fine. In a crisis, if that windshield gets hit, the integrity's not there anymore, right? Like, we are putting ourselves at risk with that little chip, but we're like, no, I can live with 10 degrees off. What we're looking at when it comes, now, most of us can drive with a cracked windshield. I get it. I'm not judging you. I have a crack in my windshield. It's kind of repaired, so I'm there too. Yeah, you see, you are judging me. That's the problem. But when it comes to truth, 10 degrees off, 10% of something that gets in our way actually could cause us trouble. Because we are having major worldwide cultural life-altering discussions in our life right now about gender and marriage and race and war. And if we decide that we're okay with a 10-degree variance from what is truth, we can get ourselves into a lot of trouble. And last week we had that great conversation about, well, is truth relative, or is it only founded in Jesus? And I think a lot of us had to wrestle with, maybe there are pieces of my life that I didn't realize I actually have a little bit of relativity in my truth about, yeah, I'm supposed to forgive people except that person. And it's okay to, I know I'm not supposed to be angry except when this angers me. So anyway, we wrestled with that. This week, we're going to be wrestling with another piece of conventional wisdom that just says, win at all costs. And what we recognize as we get into these studies that for most of us, when we hear this statement, truth is relative, like, I don't believe that. Time out, focus. We realize there is a little bit of relativity in the way that we handle truth. Most of us would not say, I win at all costs, it doesn't matter. But when we dig a little bit deeper, perhaps there is a part of us that goes, in most situations, I do try to consider how I may win. I was thinking about the first place that most of us learn win or lose is probably in like family games and board games and things like that. How many of you are like, you're a board game, your family plays some kind of board games, card games? Yeah. I remember when I first met Amanda and she was taking me to her grandma's house, and she would say, now grandma's gonna cheat for me. I was like, what are you talking about? And she's like, we'll be playing cards and she's gonna pass cards under the table to me, so we can end the game when I want it to end and I'm going to win. And I'm looking at her like, what on earth is happening? But she was just being a good grandma. She wanted her granddaughter to win. But listen, we learned something in these and Grandma was a lovely person. And I honor Grandma, wonderful lady of faith who cheated at cards. Sorry, it's my, sorry, Mom. But we learn something. If we can win somehow in life, we start to go, that's a good thing for me, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you know what? With this topic, we went to social media and we asked you the question, when is it okay to bend the rules? I hear never over there.
Some people said never.
Okay, well, let's go to...
Some times. We found out there are times.
Oh, yeah. So the first answer, obviously, is no. It's not okay at any time, right? And I think maybe that's where... Oh, is it you who answered it that way? Okay. But I tell you, so this is where most of us would want to land or find ourselves landing. But the next two responses I found sort of funny. So here's the next one. I mean, generally it's never okay, but when Batman does it, it's cool. I like that because Batman is fighting crime and he's got to do what he's got to do, right?
So when you're fighting crime, it's okay to bet. No, we're not going down that road.
No. And we just want to make it clear that Batman is a fictional character who does not exist, for those who don't know. Sorry. Anyway, And then the final one was interesting. Somebody said, yes, you learn the rules well enough that you know which ones you can bend. Wow. This speaks of relativism or something. Anyway, seriously though, we have to consider how bending the rules and winning at all costs actually costs us in the area of our integrity. Integrity, as far as I see it defined, is the quality of being honest and having strong moral principles. It's the state of being whole and undivided, and I think that's the life that God wants us to live.
Absolutely. So get your Bibles open. We are studying Proverbs and Ecclesiastes over the month of April. And our key text today is out of Proverbs chapter 10, verses 6 through 14. And here's what I want us to wrestle with today. Maybe we have been measuring win in the wrong way. I think a lot of us feel like we need to win in every situation that we get to, and we understand where that motivation comes from. What if we were to measure win in a little bit of a different way? That's what we're going to be looking at today. If you're looking for these thoughts that we're going to share, if you're looking for the scriptures, they are in your Portico app. If you're new to the church, download the Portico Community Church app. It's a little white and purple symbol, 3 little guys standing like this. As soon as you open it, you'll see sermon notes. Click on that. All of today's thoughts, all of today's scriptures we'll teach on, and a few more will be available for you. So let's jump in. Looking at integrity when it comes to winning at all costs. A life of integrity will require submission. And submission is not a word that we often equate with winning, and that's why we're going to have to shift our understanding of winning. Living with integrity, we're in a church, most of us would go, that's a good thing. But I think there are times when we say, this is good for me, we don't actually consider what that may cost me. We tend to think, well, there's nothing that I would sacrifice my integrity for to win. Yeah, I want to win, but I'm not going to sacrifice integrity. And I want us to picture the analogy of counterfeit. If I were to scribble like the number 10 on a piece of white paper and hand it to Duane and go, I bet you $10 the Leafs are going to beat the Bruins again. He wouldn't believe it for a lot of places because he doesn't think the Leafs will win, nor does he agree that the little piece of white paper is a $10 bill. But if I have a purple, glossy thing with a 10 with the proper markings and everything, but there's just one thing that's a little bit off, and I hand it to him, he may think, sure, I'm going to take your $10, you sucker. We don't normally bet on hockey, just to be record.
No, we don't.
But you can't, when you see something that's way off, it's easily recognizable as counterfeit, right? The only way that you can fool someone is if it's very, very close to what the original is. And when we get to this word integrity, a lot of us interpret integrity, well, as if I'm true to myself, if I'm of one mind, if I do what I am convicted of in the moment, and I follow my instincts, then I am living a life of integrity. It's about 10% off of what the truth would be. I want us to think, would integrity be much more better aligned not to what my instinct and being true to myself is? Could we envision integrity of being true to what God's word is, even if it goes against my instinct, even if it goes against what feels like would be beneficial for me? And if that's the measure of integrity, then to live with integrity, there will be times when what is instinctual is not going to be a life of integrity. The initial thought that I may have might go against what I read about in Scripture. And are we spiritually mature enough to recognize that our first thought or our first instinct may not always be a God-honoring one? To be a lifelong student of the Bible, to be a disciple of Jesus, means that I have to take the posture of continually learning and examining that there may be things that I've accepted as a little bit of counterfeit. Proverbs 10:8 says, the wise are glad to be instructed, but babbling fools fall flat on their faces. Now, I want to be wise. I don't want to be the babbling fool, but I got to tell you, there are times when I'm making a decision, where I'm going on a life pathway, and I'm instructed in another way when I read the Bible. I don't always feel great about that. I go, well, that doesn't, like, there's some cognitive dissonance going on. I'm not always happy to be corrected. Are you? You're happy to be corrected? You're very spiritual people. But there are times when I'm being corrected and I'm not happy. Learning to live with integrity means I will accept that I will need correction over the course of my life. I was reflecting on this over the last couple of weeks. There are some of us that we learned something in like a Sunday school, in an elementary Bible school class. And we learned the concept at this 12-year-old level. And we've never done a deeper understanding of it. Do you realize there are some of us that are living as, I'm not going to judge how old you are, but the 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, we've got an 80-year-old getting baptized today. This is amazing. That's amazing, right? And you know what I love about it? It's someone at 80 years old goes, I need to do this. I'm being instructed, right? We're living with some of our faith at 12-year-old level, and we go, well, that's just the way it is. I learned it in Sunday school. And you've never gone deeper to go, could the Bible potentially have more to teach me on this topic? It's submitting ourselves to the idea that just what's instinctual, just what's at the top of our head may not always be God-honoring. And we see this in different individuals' lives in the Bible, right? Like we were talking about this. Joseph's a guy that there were moments in his life then what his instinct was not actually God-honoring, and he did some damage in his life, but he also learned to live a life of integrity by challenging that first instinct, right?
Absolutely. So when we go to Genesis chapter 39 and you pick up Joseph's story there, for those of you who are not familiar with Joseph, he has a dream that gets him in a lot of trouble with his brothers. They end up selling him off to slavery. And when they sell him off and he's away from his father who thinks he's dead, and he finds himself imprisoned. He finds himself a captive, but nevertheless the favor of God remains on him. And the person to whom he's captive to, being Potiphar, who was a military official in the government of Pharaoh at the time in Egypt, Potiphar looks at Joseph and says, this is a person of exemplary gifts. So I'm going to give him authority over all of my household. And when he does that, Joseph is enjoying this authority, even though he's in captivity, even though his father thinks he's dead, even though his brothers have done all that they've done to him. So everything's going fine until Potiphar's wife enters the scene. And you know, Pastor Rick, I always wondered what I had in common with Joseph, but when I read Genesis chapter 39, verse 6, I read that it says that Joseph was a very handsome and well-built young man. And it's like, that's what I have in common with him.
That is you.
Yeah.
I've always said that.
Oh, there you go. But important to our message today, I want you to focus on Genesis 39, verses 8 to 9. So at this point, Potiphar's wife is making attempts to be with Joseph in an inappropriate way. Hear what Joseph says. He says, look, my master trusts me with everything in his entire household. No one here has more authority than I do. He has held back nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How could I do such a wicked thing? It would be a great sin against God. Now, if Joseph was a different person, he could have succumbed to these advances that Potiphar's wife was making. He could have enjoyed the pleasures of sin for a season. And I wrote down in my notes that we are most prone to compromise our integrity during times when we're hurt and seeking relief. Remember, the context is Joseph has been sold into slavery, hasn't seen his father. This went on for years. He could have succumbed. He could have said, I need some relief. Look what's been done to me. But Joseph, his integrity was held firmly in place, and it prevented him from sinning because he understood that there was a bigger picture than what was happening to him. He knew who he was. He knew what he had been given. He knew what his boundaries were, and he knew what his life was like within those boundaries. He knew who blessed him, and he knew who would have suffered the most offense if he had sinned. You see, when we allow our integrity to be compromised, it comes out of a life that is not submitted and not considered. Now, I know that you are a running guy and stuff like that. You're also a cycling guy. I like to dream about that in my mind, that I'm a running guy and a cycling guy. One day I'll actually do it.
You're still a handsome, young man.
Thank you. Got to be careful. Anyway, remember Lance Armstrong. Some of you have heard of Lance Armstrong. At one point, he was rated the #1 cyclist in the world. And he was breaking records. He was doing all sorts of things. We found out later on that he was actually cheating. This is what he had to say in regards to what was going on in his heart and life during this whole win at all costs mentality that he had. He said, "My ruthless desire to win at all costs served me well on the bike, but the level it went to, for whatever reason, is a flaw. That desire, that attitude, and that arrogance." He understood that compromise makes one's viewpoint very narrow. But what we understand as people of God is that submission to God reminds us that we are part of something bigger and much greater. Because submission requires awareness. We see this in Joseph's life. We can see it in our lives. Our identity, our authority, our limits, and our God. All of these are things that are happening or taking place in our life as we submit to Him. So it might seem overly simplistic, but I would say on this point that the bottom line is we need to be submitted to God so that we won't submit to compromise. And as we're talking about wisdom, we need to consider that wisdom isn't about being the smartest person in the room, but it's about being the person who's the most submitted.
No, I mean, and when we all apply that to our own lives, we go, well, I may not be in those exact situations, but we are in situations where we see, I want that.
Yeah.
It would feel, some of us may even be in a place where we can go, it makes sense for me to go for that, and God may want me to have that. Submission is pausing and first checking, God, is that what you want for me? God, is that what you've planned for me? And when we move past it, and this gets into our second thought, that a life of integrity, not only does it require submission, but it regularly can require a courageous choice. Because this is all good in theory when we sit here on a Sunday morning. When it comes down to the moment, making the hard choice, it will cost us something to live with integrity. And this is why sometimes theories are great, but how we live is very different. What if living with integrity cost you a job promotion? What if there was a few people up for the job promotion and you knew that somebody else was better suited for it, or somebody else deserved the credit for something you had been gotten credit for at the work, but you thought, but God is just blessing me and have put me in a place where I'm going to get the job promotion, so I should put myself forward for that, but you know you're not the right person for that. What would integrity look like in that moment? Would integrity look like receiving it and saying the blessing of God is on me? Or would integrity go, I need to say, well, this person actually has more credential for this. You can still make the decision however you want, but I'm not sure that I'm the right one for this. What about when it comes to getting home repair done? Home repairs cost so much these days. I just got to say, I can't believe how much home repairs cost. And you know that moment when you've got the contractor from HomeStars, which is a great website and then they go, you can just pay cash, man.
Oh, yes.
I just got real quiet in here. What is the right thing? What is the right thing? Because, I mean, the contractor's going to make more. You're going to pay less. We're all going to be doing well. What is the right thing? What does living integrity look like? What if it costs you more money? What if it costs you a job promotion? What if you can tell the truth in a way that doesn't reflect so poorly on you? Like, well, this is in essence what happened, but it makes you look like you didn't really have any fault in the situation. But the truth would be, here's the thing that I did wrong. What do you do? What if integrity cost you relationally, financially, professionally? It's easy to live with integrity when things are going well. Like you said, when we are hurting, when it is hard, that's when it's difficult. And when it costs us personally, will we choose integrity or do we choose the easy way out? Now, let me challenge again, easy. What does winning look like? Proverbs 10:9 says this. People with integrity walk safely, but those who follow crooked paths are exposed. And the thought of, well, if I manipulate the end, if I manipulate the pathway, then it will go well for me and I will be safe. Proverbs is challenging that. Proverbs is saying, can you just try to live with integrity and let God make the pathway forward for you, even if it feels like it's difficult? even if it feels like we're not winning. It's scary to consider times for me how much integrity, I mean, it's not the mass, but how much of my own personal integrity aligned to Christ will I risk so that I get to control the outcome?
Yeah, and I think that's why this message that we're sharing, Pastor Rick, is so important to each and every one of us. Because we're all tempted in this area. I think to myself sometimes we'll compromise our integrity to continue to be popular, or we'll compromise our integrity for an easier life, as you said. And as we think about that, I want to turn your attention to the life of David. And you'll remember that David was called a man after God's own heart, and there's different aspects of David's life that we remember, but there was an episode in David's life, and it was actually a lengthy episode where David, before he ascended to the throne of Israel, was on the run for his life. And he was on the run for his life, not because of anything that he had done, it's just that he was underneath somebody who was jealous of him. If you'll remember now, so David is on the run, and Saul, King Saul, is pursuing him. And as King Saul's pursuing him, I mean, the Bible teaches us in 1 Samuel 24 that Saul's taking 3,000 of his elite soldiers, and they're chasing David and a group of his loyal people. They're chasing them all over the place, just trying to kill David. So I want you to consider what you would do if you were in that situation. And God presents a very interesting opportunity before David. Chapter 24, verses 4 to 7. This is what David's men who are with David said, because the situation is that Saul ends up in a cave, and he's vulnerable. And at this moment, David could end all of the problems that he was facing up to that point. And the people who were with him actually thought, David, now's the time. And they said this, today the Lord is telling you, I will certainly put your enemy into your power to do with as you wish, which I believe they were right when they said that. So David crept forward and cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. But then David's conscience began bothering him because he had cut Saul's robe. And he said to his men, the Lord forbid that I should do this to my lord the king. I shouldn't attack the Lord's anointed one, for the Lord himself has chosen him. So David restrained his men and did not let them kill Saul. Now I looked at this as being a courageous decision because David, in one foul swoop, he would have had the absolute support of his men, and he would have saved himself many, many times, more times, where he'd have to go through many other things. Because if you continue to read in chapter 24, it seems like David and Saul actually reconcile, and then if you read a few chapters later, Saul's chasing him again. And see, it made me ask, if I had somebody in my life who was really giving me a hard time, and I was within firing range, what would I do? What would I do? And especially, not only if I was within firing range, for lack of a better term, but if I had people who, they were following me and going through the same thing that I was. And they're going through all sorts of problems, and they're saying, hey, come on, take this guy out. What would I do? I think David courageously stuck to his integrity. And I think it says to us that we got to be mindful of the company that we keep. We really do. You see, courage and integrity will constantly be tested in our lives. For David, his decision may have puzzled his followers. And it did cost him more time just wandering around, but it didn't cost him his soul. See, the question that we have to consider, has a courageous decision that we've ever had to make, has it ever put us against popular opinion? And has it actually ever cost us more heartache in the short term? I want to let you know, just because that was the case, it doesn't mean it was the wrong decision.
Right.
Courageous decision making and keeping your integrity sometimes means being misunderstood and missing opportunities. It's also a sign that you are playing by God's rules and not by anyone else's.
No, it's a fantastic thought. And it's where we're going to end today, that a life of integrity is its own reward. That is, it is our third thought. But sometimes we make life too simplistic. We say, if it benefits me tangibly in this circumstance, in this season of my life, then it is a win. And if it costs me in this season of life, then it is a loss. And that's too much of zero sum. Rather than considering that a life lived with integrity will mean steps backwards all the time, losing things all the time for an eternal reward. What did Jesus say? Store up your treasures in heaven. Don't store up treasures here. Proverbs 10 and 11 says, even the words of godly are a life-giving fountain, and the words of the wicked conceal violent intentions. And I was thinking about this compared to David. Those men around him would have said they were godly men. They were God-fearing men, right? Mm-hmm. Can we put that back up on the screen for a sec, guys? That if they had submitted for a moment and said, my instinct is I want David to win, what the easy choice is would be to take Saul out right now. What the courageous choice would be is to let God fight this battle. They would have given godly counsel. And sometimes when we put the zero sum, if I get the job, if I get the relationship, if I get the money, if I get you fill in the blank what you would maybe compromise a little integrity for to advance life. Would we be in that place of the life-giving godly wisdom? I remember Pastor Doug said it last week when he was speaking. Who is the person that you go to in the moment when you need a word of wisdom? I was reflecting on when he said that I pray I would become that person. Not the person that tickles the most ears, that has the most followers, that has the highest reach. I want to be the person with wisdom that says the hard thing, that knows that people would know that when I speak with integrity because it's founded on the truth of God. That's the person I want to become. I've been wrestling with that thought all week long. Proverbs 15 and 16 says, it's better to have little with the fear of the Lord than to have great treasure and inner turmoil. The life of integrity is the reward. And we looked at that concept of fear of the Lord last week. We have a lot of fear in this world. We have a fear of not having enough. We have a fear of being hated. We have a fear of letting other people down. I pray that none of these fears become greater in my life than the reverence and honor that I give God and I give His righteousness in my life. And this is what we saw in the life of Daniel over the course of his life, right? Yeah,
and we did a wonderful series on Daniel, I believe it was last year. And actually just recently I went down with my family to go see a play about Daniel. If you've ever heard of Sight and Sound, little shout out to them in Pennsylvania. If you've never gone, you should go. They put on fantastic plays. But they were talking about the life of Daniel, and I was reminded once again that here is this man, he's exiled, he's taken from his homeland, just like Joseph was, taken from his homeland, displaced, put somewhere else. He serves under 3 different kings. And by the time we catch up to him in Daniel chapter 6, he's under the 3rd king. If I have it correctly, none of these kings were what we would call faith believers or Christ followers, or they did not worship God. But the 3rd king, Darius, at the very least, because he respected Daniel, he respected Daniel's faith. And if you know the story, the king is tricked, basically, into having Daniel put into the lion's den because there was an edict that was passed that anyone who gives worship and praise to anyone else other than the king at that time would be thrown into the lion's den. And the thing about Daniel is that his enemies knew that his character was predictable and it was impeccable. They knew what he would do. They knew that as soon as they caused the king to make this edict, that they would trap Daniel. And the scriptures are very interesting. This won't come on the screen, but if you were to go to verse 10 of chapter 6, even though Daniel knew what it was going to cost him, the Bible teaches us that he did as he usually did. He went upstairs to his room and he prayed. He faced Jerusalem and he prayed, and he didn't do this once. He didn't do it twice. He did it 3 times as he usually did, giving thanks to his God. You see, when the time of testing came for Daniel, he already had a system in his life of defaulting to reliance upon God, and that's what kept his integrity. But here's the thing. There's a lot of people whose names come and go. The reason why my family and I were able to go down to Pennsylvania a while ago and still hear the story about Daniel is because when God does something in our lives and makes us people of integrity, our names live on. We leave a legacy. And you know the wonderful thing about Daniel? It wasn't like he was trying to make something of himself. He was making something of his God. So after Daniel is rescued from the lion's den, because we all know the story, hopefully, and King Darius is overjoyed. King Darius, remember, this is a king who didn't know God. The Bible tells us he says these words in chapter 6, verses 26 and 27. He made a decree that everyone throughout his kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. But most importantly, he said this, for he, being God, is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. You know, Pastor Rick, I want to live in such a way. Whether everybody in the world knows me or not, that's okay. But I want to live in such a way where those who are closest to me, my friends, the people that I'm neighbors with, the people that see me at the library somehow in some way, when they think of my name, not that they're just thinking of me, but they're thinking of God. And it's a legacy that I've left with them, because that's what Daniel did. And that's why integrity became its own reward. And just the same way for you. You see, maybe the whole world isn't going to remember your name, but that's okay. Because he wants to do something in your life and in my life where our family, our friends, the people who know us the most, they remember who we are and they remember the God that we served. And just going back to Proverbs 10, verse 7, just for a second, just be reminded of this. It's not going to come on the screen, but the scripture says, we have happy memories of the godly, but the name of a wicked person rots away.